Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we cut through the noise, distill complex topics, and really bring you the essential insights from the cutting edge.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into a fascinating and, frankly, pretty critical area: AI agents. Now, you've likely heard a lot about large language models, systems that are incredible at generating text, conversing, even creating art.
Right.
But AI agents, they seem to take that capability a giant leap further. They don't just talk or generate, they act.
That's absolutely the key differentiator.
Yeah.
Imagine an AI system that doesn't just respond to a static query. Instead, it kind of perceives its environment, it reasons through problems, makes strategic decisions,
Okay.
and then autonomously executes actions to achieve a goal you've given it.
This could be anything from streamlining tedious business stuff, like categorizing service requests,
hmm
to a really complex multi-step task, like, say, researching a niche topic, summarizing it, and then drafting a perfectly tailored email based on those findings. The transformative potential is, well, it's genuinely immense. And here's where it gets really compelling, and maybe a little bit daunting, too. With that immense promise comes a whole new frontier of security challenges.
Definitely.
Our mission today is to thoroughly explore this intricate world of AI agent security. We'll examine precisely why our existing, traditional security measures just aren't enough.
Yeah, they fall short.
What unique vulnerabilities these powerful autonomous agents introduce, and critically, how Google is approaching a multi-layered strategy to secure them.
And our deep dive today, it's heavily informed by Google's latest thinking on this. We're drawing pretty significant insights from a foundational paper, an introduction to Google's approach to AI agent security, published just this past May.
Okay, very recent then.
Yeah, by Santiago Diaz, Christoph Kern, and Cara Olive. And this document, it's part of Google's ongoing effort to openly share best practices for building secure AI systems, aligning directly with their broader Secure AI Framework, or SAIF.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener? Whether you're maybe thinking about deploying these powerful systems or building them or even just interacting with them day to day.
Which many of us will be soon, if not already.
Right. Understanding their security mechanisms isn't just important, it feels absolutely crucial. It's about harnessing their incredible power responsibly and ensuring you grasp the underlying mechanisms of safety. Let's really unpack this.
Sounds good.
So to begin, let's just establish a foundational understanding. What exactly is an AI agent? As we hinted, it's an AI system designed to perceive its environment, make decisions, and take autonomous actions to achieve user-defined goals.
And the core difference from a standard LLM, which primarily just generates content, is that an agent acts.
Okay.
It leverages its AI reasoning to interact with other systems and execute tasks. Like categorizing service requests, researching, summarizing, drafting those emails we mentioned.
Mhm.
And this capability, while it offers immense value, it inherently introduces a new class of risks. On the promise side, we see huge potential for reshaping business operations, fundamentally changing how individuals interact with technology.
And the development seems rapid, too.
Are incredibly rapid. Frameworks like Google's own Agent Development Kit, ADK, and even open source tools like LangChain, they signal a clear move towards widespread deployment. We're talking potentially fleets of agents operating at scale pretty soon.
It sounds like we're building incredibly powerful, highly independent digital assistants. But, well, of course, with that kind of power and autonomy, you immediately start thinking about the potential for things to go wrong.
Precisely. And this increasing capability and autonomy, it introduces unique and really critical security challenges that demand a strategic, fresh focus. There's an inherent tension here, almost a paradox. As we increase an agent's autonomy and capability, its utility, we directly increase the complexity of ensuring its safety and security.
Right, that makes sense. A fundamental trade-off.
It's a fundamental trade-off that we
Makes
have to
sense.
manage very carefully.
So why can't we just apply our existing security frameworks, the stuff we use for regular software? What's different about AI agents that makes traditional security fall short?
Well, traditional system security, like classical software restrictions, it often lacks the crucial contextual awareness needed for these versatile dynamic agents. It could be just too restrictive, severely limiting the agent's usefulness, kind of neutering its purpose.
Too blunt an instrument.
Exactly. But then on the other hand, purely reasoning-based security, just relying on the AI model's own judgment to self-regulate, that's also insufficient.
Why is that?
Because these models, well, they're susceptible to subtle manipulations like prompt injection, and their probabilistic nature means they simply can't offer robust deterministic guarantees of safety. So neither approach, really, in isolation, is sufficient to manage this delicate balance between utility and risk.
And this is where Google's proposed path comes in, what they call a hybrid defense-in-depth approach. It sounds like they're trying to get the best of both worlds.
It's exactly right. This approach meticulously builds on well-established principles of secure software and systems design. And importantly, it aligns with Google's broader Secure AI framework, SAIF. It's about strategically combining those traditional deterministic controls, the hard rules, with dynamic reasoning-based defenses, which are more adaptable. The overarching idea is to create a layered security posture, a true defense in depth that tightly constrains potential harm while, robustly preserving the agent's utility. And this whole strategy is built upon 3 core security principles we should probably dig into.
Okay, definitely. But first, maybe, to really get why these principles and this hybrid approach are needed, we should look under the hood a bit at the agent's architecture.
Good idea. Understanding the risks means examining the operational components. Let's walk through them sequentially, like how the agent processes information and acts.
Perfect. Where do we start?
We begin at the very first step: user interaction, input, perception, and personalization. This is where the agent gets all its input, direct user instructions, contextual data maybe pulled from emails or websites, even multimodal inputs like images or audio.
And the critical security implication right there at the input stage.
The absolute critical challenge is reliably distinguishing trusted user commands from potentially untrusted contextual data. Think about content scraped from an email or a web page. If an agent can't make that distinction with certainty, it opens the door wide to prompt injection attacks. Malicious instructions hidden in seemingly harmless data can completely hijack the agent's behavior. Plus, personalization needs careful controls against manipulation or data contamination.
Okay, so distinguishing trusted from untrusted input is paramount. What's next after the input is processed?
Then the agent consults its system instructions. These are like the predefined rules and directives that define the agent's purpose, its capabilities, its boundaries. They get combined with your user query and other data sources.
And the security angle here.
Clear delimitation, rigorous separation. You absolutely need to keep those trusted system instructions separate from any untrusted user data or external content. If they get mixed up or aren't clearly marked.
The agent could get confused.
Worse, it could be tricked into interpreting external untrusted content as core system commands. That fundamentally alters its intended behavior. It's another key area for mitigating prompt injection.
Got it. Then we arrive at what I think of as the brain. Reasoning and planning, often the core LLM. This is where the AI reasons about the user's goals and develops a plan, a sequence of steps, maybe deciding which tools to use. Then it can be iterative, right? Refining the plan.
Exactly. It can loop through reasoning and planning cycles.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating, but also a security challenge, is the probabilistic nature of this LLM planning. It's less like a precise computer program, more like a highly intelligent guesser.
Usually right, but not always perfectly predictable.
Precisely. Sometimes those guesses can lead to unpredictable outcomes or errors in interpretation or planning. And because current LLM architectures don't have rigorous built-in separation between different parts of a prompt, say user instructions versus untrusted data from a document.
Still susceptible to prompt injection then.
Highly susceptible. And this risk gets worse in those iterative planning loops. Flawed logic or malicious instructions from one step can kind of snowball, influencing and degrading the next steps, leading to potentially harmful outcomes. High autonomy agents, the ones doing complex multi-step planning, they inherently have a significantly higher risk profile here.
Okay, so the agent thinks it plans. Then it needs to do something. That brings us to orchestration and action execution, using tools.
Yes, tools are how the agent interacts with the outside world. APIs for sending emails, accessing file systems, controlling smart devices, you name it.
And this seems like a really critical point for security.
It is. This is exactly where, as the Google paper puts it, rogue plans translate into real-world impact. If the reasoning or planning phase was compromised, uncontrolled access to powerful actions, deleting files, making purchases, transferring data becomes incredibly risky.
So what's needed here?
Robust authentication and authorization for every tool use. The agent must operate with the principle of least privilege and dynamically adding third-party tools. That brings its own risks, deceptive descriptions, maybe insecure implementations of the tools themselves. It needs careful management.
Agents also have a memory, right? To remember context or preferences across interactions.
Yes, they retain context, learn preferences, facts, to provide continuity and personalization.
But memory can be a vulnerability too.
Ironically, yes. It can become a vector for persistent attacks. Imagine if malicious data, like a prompt injection hidden in a document, gets processed and stored in the agent's memory, maybe as a summarized fact. That stored malicious data could subtly influence the agent's behavior in totally different future interactions.
Yeah.
It really demands strict isolation between users and context to prevent this kind of contamination. And users absolutely need transparency and control over agent memory, the ability to see what's stored and clear it.
Okay, almost there. Finally, response rendering. This is just formatting the output for the user interface?
It seems simple, but yeah, formatting the agent's final output for display. But even here, without proper sanitization or escaping of the output, tailored to the specific content type.
You can get classic web vulnerabilities.
Exactly. Things like cross-site scripting, XSS, if malicious scripts get injected into the output, or even data exfiltration through cleverly crafted URLs, may be hidden in image tags. So robust, context-aware sanitization by the application rendering the output is crucial.
Wow, okay. That architectural walkthrough really highlights how many potential points of failure or attack there are. So bringing it together, what are the biggest risks Google identifies? You mentioned two main categories.
That's right. They focus on two major risks: rogue actions and sensitive data disclosure.
Let's start with rogue actions. What falls under that?
Rogue actions are basically any unintended, harmful, or policy-violating things the agent might do. And a primary cause, as we've discussed, is prompt injection. Malicious instructions hidden in processed data trick the agent's AI model, hijacking its planning or reasoning.
So the agent thinks it's following instructions, but they're actually the attacker's instructions.
Precisely. It misinterprets embedded untrusted data as legitimate commands and executes them using the user's authority, often without the user even knowing. Like processing a malicious email it was supposed to summarize, but instead it's tricked into leaking your sensitive data. It's a hostile takeover of intent.
Scary. But it's not always malicious attacks, right? Rogue actions can happen accidentally.
Correct. They can also stem from simple misalignment or misinterpretation. The agent might just misunderstand ambiguous instructions or context. It diverges harmfully from your intent, even without external compromise.
Like emailing the wrong mic.
Exactly that example. Email Mike about the project update. If there are multiple mics, it might pick the wrong one, sharing sensitive info accidentally. Agents can also misinterpret external interactions, like misreading buttons on a website, leading to accidental purchases or submitting forms unintentionally.
And the impact, it sounds potentially huge.
It scales directly with the agent's authorized capabilities and tool access. We could be looking at significant financial loss, major data breaches, system disruption, reputational damage, and potentially even physical safety risks, depending on what the agent controls.
Okay, that's rogue actions. What about the second major risk, sensitive data disclosure?
This is when the agent improperly reveals private or confidential information. One key method, often linked back to prompt injection, is data exfiltration.
How does that work?
An attacker tricks the agent into making sensitive information visible to them. They might guide the agent to retrieve some confidential data and then leak it through its actions, like embedding the data in a URL the agent is prompted to visit, or hiding secrets in code commit messages it generates.
Or it could be more direct, maybe in the agent's response itself.
Yes, through output manipulation. An attacker could trick the agent into including sensitive data directly in its response, maybe in a text summary or markdown. If that output isn't rendered securely by the application, without proper validation or sanitization.
The data gets exposed.
Right. It could be exposed directly to the user, or maybe to the attacker via those crafted image URLs we mentioned, or even through XSS. The impact of sensitive data disclosure is typically severe, often irreversible. Think privacy breaches, IP loss, compliance violations, account takeovers.
Okay, those are some serious risks. So how do we start building defenses? Google proposes 3 core principles for agent security, right?
That's right. 3 foundational principles to build upon. Principle 1, agents must have well-defined human controllers. The mandate is clear. Agents operate under explicit human oversight. Systems must reliably distinguish instructions from the authorized user versus any other input, especially that untrusted data.
So for the really critical stuff, deleting lots of data, spending money, changing security settings, you need a human to explicitly say yes, a confirmation step.
Absolutely. A human stays in the loop for high-impact decisions. It ensures the user is the ultimate arbiter. Plus, in multi-user situations, you need distinct agent identities and clear authorization models. The key control focus here is really on agent user controls, backed by infrastructure for managing identities and secure input channels.
Okay, makes sense. Principle 2.
Principle 2. Agent powers must have limitations. This means an agent's powers, the actions it can take, the resources it can access, must be carefully limited, aligned precisely with its purpose, and, importantly, the user's risk tolerance.
So an agent just meant for research shouldn't be able to touch financial accounts.
Exactly. It's extending the concept of least privilege, but making it dynamic for AI agents. Permissions need to be dynamically confined at runtime, tailored to the specific task. You need definable maximum permission levels that are enforced, preventing privilege escalation. And crucially, you, the user, need to be able to inspect and revoke delegated authority anytime.
So the key focus is agent permissions.
Yes, requiring robust authentication, authorization, and auditing AAA infrastructure adapted for agents, using things like Scotch OAuth tokens and sandboxing.
Right. And the third principle?
Principle 3. Agent actions and planning must be observable. This is all about transparency. We need clear visibility into what the agent is doing for trust, for debugging, for auditing, for incident response, and just for user understanding.
How do you achieve that observability?
Primarily through robust logging across the entire architecture. Logging inputs, tools used, parameters, outputs, and ideally even intermediate reasoning steps. This log data needs secure storage, of course, and user interfaces should be designed for transparency, showing you the agent's thought process, data sources, or intended actions before they happen.
The focus here being agent observability.
Correct. Necessitating good, secure, centralized logging systems and APIs that make agent actions understandable.
So those are the principles. How does Google actually weave them into a practical strategy? You mentioned this hybrid defense-in-depth approach.
Right. It strategically combines deterministic security measures, think rigid rules, with dynamic reasoning-based defenses, the adaptable AI smarts. The goal is robust boundaries to mitigate harm, especially those rogue actions from prompt injection, while preserving utility. It recognizes neither rules alone nor AI judgment alone is enough.
Okay, so what's the first layer of this defense?
Layer 1 is the traditional deterministic measures or runtime policy enforcement. Think of policy engines operating outside the AI model's reasoning. They monitor and control agent actions before execution, acting as security choke points.
So, like a firewall, but specifically for agent actions. If an agent wants to send an email or buy something, this engine checks it first.
Exactly. It intercepts the request before it executes. Then it evaluates that request against predefined, explicit rules. These rules consider the action's risk, the context, maybe past actions.
And based on the rules?
It decides. Allow, block, if a policy is violated, or maybe require user confirmation. Like block purchases over $500, require confirmation for emails sent after reading data from a suspicious source, unless you approve it.
What are the strengths and weaknesses here?
Strengths are clear. Reliable, predictable hard limits. They're testable, auditable, offer concrete guarantees, great for limiting worst-case impact. But the limitation is complexity. Defining comprehensive static rules for all possible actions is hard, and they often lack deep contextual understanding. A simple rule might struggle with nuance. Is sending this email okay, or is it data exfiltration?
Which is presumably where the second layer comes in, reasoning-based defense strategies.
Precisely. This layer leverages AI models themselves to evaluate inputs, outputs, or even the agent's internal reasoning for potential risks. The aim is to make the agent's core reasoning more resilient and better aligned with safe parameters.
How does that work in practice? What are the techniques?
Several techniques. There's adversarial training during development, exposing models to lots of attack examples like prompt injection, teaching them safe responses, like recognizing and ignoring malicious instructions or flagging them. This often uses structural prompt conventions like delimiters or role tagging. Then there are specialized guard models, smaller AIs, trained specifically to detect attack signs in inputs or outputs, acting like focused security analysts. And more advanced methods involve models analyzing proposed plans to predict the probability of bad outcomes, flagging risky plans, or triggering stricter deterministic policies.
The strength here seems to be handling that nuance and dynamic behavior the rules miss.
Exactly. They can potentially recognize more subtle or evolving malicious patterns than static rules, increasing attacker difficulty and cost.
But there are limitations here too, I assume.
Definitely. A crucial point. They are non-deterministic. They work on probability, so no absolute guarantees. Models can still be fooled by novel attacks. Failure modes can be unpredictable. That's why they're insufficient on their own for critical actions. They must work with and be backed by those deterministic controls. It's a partnership.
A symbiotic relationship, as you said earlier, and supporting both layers, continuous assurance efforts.
Absolutely vital. These are ongoing activities. Key efforts include rigorous regression testing to ensure fixes stick, variant analysis to proactively test variations of known threats, and critically, human expertise.
Meaning,
Red teams conducting simulated attacks, user feedback providing real-world insights, security reviewers doing audits, and external security researchers, often through bug bounty programs like Google's VRP, bringing diverse perspectives to find weaknesses.
what consistently stands out to me through all this is that AI agents really are a paradigm shift. The potential is huge, undeniably, but their autonomy, their ability to act in the world, demands this incredibly proactive and sophisticated security approach right from the start.
Yeah, you really can't just bolt security on afterward.
Right. We can't just rely on traditional security designed for predictable software, and we definitely can't place blind faith in the probabilistic reasoning of today's AI models. Neither one alone cuts it.
And that's why Google's hybrid strategy feels like such a pragmatic and frankly necessary path forward. Layering those deterministic guarantees, the hard boundaries, with the contextual adaptability of reasoning-based